I'm just giving it a second so that all of the attendees can be ready. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We will begin. This is a special evening of the Montoursville Area School District Board of Education. Tonight's meeting will be to discuss a new feasibility study for our district. Before I begin, I want to share with you that the slides, as well as I think Scott, you said it was a 100-page feasibility study document, is out on our website. If you click under District, you will see the drop-down menu and you will be able to find all of the materials that we are presenting to you this evening. So before we begin, I would like to share with you some of the pieces of history here. In 2014, the board determined that they should have and engage in a feasibility study addressing the aging buildings within the district. The results of the study showed that two buildings at the time being in most need were the high school and the Loyola Valley Elementary School. It was determined at that time to complete one of those projects and wait on the other. The high school project was the one completed in 2017. However, to ensure that the Loyola Valley Elementary School was eligible for the state funding when and if a project was to be determined, the board moved forward with the establishment of a Plan Con Section A. And essentially what that means is that we had a place marker on the books of the state to earmark state funds for any project at that school and follow the guidelines of the feasibility study at that time. As you all know, it's 2020 now, and 6 years have passed, and that Plan Con place marker is coming to an end for us. I have received word from the state that we need to either move on a project by July of 2020 or forgo the funding. The study done in 2014 is also now out of date by state standards, and any continuation of that Plan Con would also require a new feasibility study. So that is why we're doing this evening. When I received this information, I shared with the board what was brought to my attention so a direction could be established. Crabtree Verbatim was established in 2014 as the architect of record on the process of the Plan Con and for Loyola Valley. So Crabtree Verbatim has done this feasibility study, and it is required to be looking at us as a district as a whole, not a piecemeal and not a building, but as a whole in essence. Therefore, what you're going to be hearing about throughout this meeting will address all of the district buildings, not just the Loyola Valley Elementary School. Tonight is the first phase, and the first phase is being presented publicly. This session will be repeated again on June the 10th for additional public input. During this phase of the study, the architects will share factual information about the statistics of the district, such as where we are currently with our enrollment, as well as the potential future enrollment projections, the current capabilities, and how the schools are utilized. They're also going to share factual information about the current building deficiencies, including those that are building code deficiencies. It is important for members of the public to understand these deficiencies and ask any questions that they have about anything that is being presented tonight or at any of our public meetings. This is only the first phase of communicating to you what the needs of the district are currently. The next phase will come in July when we develop options to address these deficiencies and bring such options back to you, the public. We're going to be asking the public to weigh in on the options to be considered when investing in the infrastructure of the district. I want to be very clear. We want to hear from you. How we move forward with this study and the results of the study are a community decision. As community members, you have the opportunity to attend any and all public sessions regarding study discussions. We've advertised these meetings in the Web Weekly, on our website, on Facebook, and have sent postcards out as an invitation to all residents of the district so that they are aware that we are asking for their input. These sessions will also be videotaped, and you can find that video on our YouTube channel. And that link is at the upper right-hand corner of our website. It says YouTube. When you click into that, you're going to be able to see these videotaped messages. I ask that should you have a question sometime after the meeting, that you take the time to watch the video footage at your leisure so that you can have answers to your questions. We are using every public method available to reach out to you, our residents, so that you have your input to ensure that what the board determines is in the best interest of the community as well as our students. It's your It is your responsibility to educate yourself on this process so you know the facts and can help us make informed decisions as we all move forward with this process. This evening, we're going to hear the presentation from the architects first. Then we will have public question and answer time. There will be a process that gets followed. So it runs alphabetically, and you raise your hand, and then you will be allowed to speak so that everyone has an opportunity to be heard. We really thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time and attention, knowing that this is the future of our district. So with that, I would like to turn the meeting over to Scott Cousins. And Scott is from Crabtree-Rohrbaugh, and he will be presenting to you the feasibility study here for 2020.
Thank you, Christina. Let me get this presentation started. Okay, can everybody see the starter slide there?
Yes, I see it, Scott.
Okay. Okay, so first let me talk a little bit about the feasibility study process. As Christina mentioned, a district-wide facility study is required anytime you go before the state and seek reimbursement from the state. And we do have that current PlanCon application in the works that's eligible up to July of 2021. You have to be under contracts with construction by that time for that project. Or in the instance of this new district-wide facility study, if the district chooses to pursue a different path and pursue the new PlanCon reimbursement process that will be forthcoming to be issued by the state, then they need to do district-wide facility study, and that's what we've been working on. We started this process in January, and you can see kind of a timeline in front of you of our process of a facility study. First, we meet with the district to define their goals, and then there's a lot of information gathering, gathering of data, walking the facilities, doing building surveys, getting utility bills, gathering enrollment projection information. Then we analyze that data and determine the needs. And as Christina mentioned, we kind of took a pause at that moment because we wanted to share that information with the public prior to proceeding to the next steps, which is the development of the options and the eventual recommendations by the school board. So this information gathering and analysis that we've been working on, I mentioned some of these already, but we've met with the district to update their educational program, how they currently teach their students in the programs that they implement. We've looked at the existing building capacities across the district as far as how many students each building can accommodate. We looked at the educational and functional deficiencies, so the things that each building does not have to be able to, whether it's to educate your students or whether it's to operate effective and efficiently. We've looked at projected enrollment and what kind of impact that has on the process. We did I mentioned a detailed survey with engineers, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers, walked through all the building facilities to look at the existing conditions and developed a recommendation of what things should be upgraded to today's standards and brought support a cost estimate for those items. So those are the things I will be reviewing tonight. So we'll start with the goals and objectives. As I mentioned, one of the first things we did was meet with the administrative team at the district to determine what do you want to achieve with this study? What are the end results that you want to get out of it before we go down the process of looking a little bit more into need. So I'll kind of read them to you. Provide equity among elementary grade students, improve the existing facility infrastructure at Loyola Sauk Valley Elementary School and Leiter Elementary School, improve the efficiency and consistency of resources and continuity of educational delivery, provide 21st century educational spaces and experiences at the middle school and elementary schools that reflect the curriculum, address safety and security concerns at Loyola Sauk Valley Elementary School, provide air conditioning at all schools, and develop fiscally responsible solutions that address cost of capital projects, transportation, staffing, and operations. So the first thing we're going to look at is existing building capacity. So what we did was we toured each one of the buildings and we documented how each space was being used, whether it's a classroom, an art room, a special ed classroom, and assigned a capacity to each one of the rooms that received capacity and kind of used PDE guidelines as a basis for those capacities. And at the elementary level, every standard classroom would be considered capacity as far as of how many students you could accommodate. And PDE guidelines are 25 students per classroom. You don't, at the elementary level, you don't get capacity for auditoriums or gymnasiums or special education rooms, because those are rooms that, or art rooms, things like that, that when students occupy their rooms, those rooms, it's not like their existing classrooms are backfilled. So really from a capacity standpoint, you're just looking at your kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth grade classrooms for capacity. And there you see at Loyola Sauk Valley, there's 13 of those standard classrooms with a total capacity of 325. Now, if you look to the bottom of that slide, you'll see that we apply what we call a utilization rate, and at the elementary level is 90%, factoring in that you can't expect to occupy every single classroom in the whole building at exactly 25 students. We all know that there's bubbles from one grade to the next. One grade might have less students, one grade might have more. You're never going to exactly fit 25 students in every classroom. So we calculate what's called a functional building capacity, which is more of a realistic number of students that building can accommodate. So the functional building capacity of Loyola Sauk Valley is 293, and you'll see there that the enrollment in 2019-20 was 257. So from a capacity standpoint and existing condition, what this tells us is that you're in good shape here, and actually you probably have a little bit more capacity to accommodate additional enrollment. At Leiter Elementary School, you'll see there that there's 21 of those standard classrooms. 2 classrooms are unassigned. That means currently they're not being used. However, if the district should choose to put students in there, you would have the capacity to add 2 more classrooms to that count. We include that in our capacity calculation, and you get a total PDE capacity at the bottom of 575. And when you apply the utilization rate of 90%, it's 518. And there you can see the enrollment of 440, once again, well below the capacity of Leiter. When you get to the secondary level at the middle school and high school, the calculation gets a little convoluted just because the PDE does start assigning capacity to things like gymnasiums, auxiliary gymnasiums, orchestra rooms, music rooms, because students are moving throughout the building and they are backfilling those classrooms they don't occupy. I will say this is still a little bit convoluted, because if you can imagine, that gymnasium doesn't have 66 kids in it every single period of the day. So we apply a smaller utilization rate there. You can see 85% utilization rate. But even when looking at that lower utilization rate, you could certainly expect that how many students you can accommodate in there is below that 802, depending on how you schedule and operate that building. So functional capacity at CE Hall Middle School is 802, and the current enrollment is 643. Similarly, at the high school, it goes even more to that kind of gap between enrollment and capacity, because now you have things like tech ed classrooms and foreign language classrooms, things like that. But the total functional building capacity of the high school is 924, and the 1920 enrollment was 610. So what that tells us is, from an existing building capacity standpoint in their current enrollment, that all 4 of your buildings have plenty of capacity and room to spare should there be an increase in enrollment. So that brings us to our next thing. So we know from where we stand in our current picture. Now we got to look at where we go in the future picture. And for the projected enrollment, we use a couple of different methods to look at your enrollment in the future. And the main thing we look at is Pde projections. Pde bases their projections on live births and retention rates. And as such, those projections can vary drastically from one projection to the next. So they tend to be somewhat reliable, but unreliable as well. So one of the other things we like to do is look at the past 3-year growth rate and 5-year growth rates. So you can see on this chart in front of you, you have the different colors of the 3 and the 5-year are in the orange and in the gray. The Pde projections are in the blue. You can see that across the board from the total K-12 population, Pde and based on your growth rates all have a declining enrollment for the district. Now you'll see a couple different straight lines across there. The red line at the top is the total capacity of the district. The dark blue line below that is that functional capacity once you take out when you factor in that utilization rate. And then the green line is a planned capacity. So whether you're projected to increase enrollment, decrease enrollment, stay steady, we would always recommend that you plan for more than what that projection is showing you. And we use 10% as a planning rule of thumb, just because even though things can change, the situation we're in now with the pandemic could change, and the things in the future as far as enrollment that people really don't have a handle of. But we would never want to plan for enrollment projections down the road that might not come true. So the K-12, you can see that picture there. Then if we look a little closer at the elementary schools, so the Department of Education does not do projections based on individual schools. They base it on the entire grade level. But if we just looked historically what's been happening at each one of your schools, you can see there at Loyola Sock on the left, it's been more of a kind of a steady decline over the years. And then lighter on the right, you've had a slight increase that peaked about 5 years ago, and a steady decline since that. And one thing to be cautious of is when you're looking at these smaller enrollment bodies and in these projections, a swing of a couple of students or a couple percent could have a bigger impact. So if these are at those smaller levels, it's definitely more difficult to project. This is looking at the specific K-4 population. So if you look there, the blue line across Pde has that more of a flat projection. And then you can see there that the gray and the orange are the 3 and the 5-year historic projections. And then the yellow is what we call the line of best fit. So if you average all those out together, where does that show up? So that's once again declining enrollment for that line of best fit. Pde's having a kind of flat enrollment, but some kind of bullet points to summarize the enrollment discussion at the end of the slide, at the bottom of the slide there. So it's across the district, it's declining at a rate of anywhere from 1.37 to 2.21% annually, and that's based on historic numbers. And I mentioned there your planned capacity. And wants to be 10% of your projection, but also, even though the Department of Education requires us to look 10 years in the future, really any projection, even if you're hired a demographer to investigate this further, would never say look past that 5-year window, because there's just too many variables 5 years out that could have an impact on it. So we always look in that 5-year window and then look at your planned capacity plus 10%. So really this will kind of come into play as we start developing options and looking at ways to meet the needs of the district as far as do we plan on current enrollment? Do we take these declining enrollments into consideration when doing any of those options? So this will come up further discussion down the road. Next, we're going to look at the educational and functional deficiencies. So there's kind of two prongs to what we analyze in the building, in each of your buildings, and that is, one is anything existing. What are the conditions of what you have in place? And then what do you not have in place to do what you need to do? So this is what you don't have in place. These are the things that are not present in order to properly educate the students and operate functionally. So we'll start at Loyola Sauk Valley Elementary School. And this was based on our walkthrough, our understanding of your educational program, our meeting with your administration, and understanding of how you currently teach these students. So STEM lab, currently there's no space within the facility to properly implement that part of the curriculum. As times change with education, so do your spaces that you need to build around these students, and STEM is one of those. Proper classroom storage, adequate sized library, a separate gymnasium. You'll see there kind of in the middle of the screen and the top there, that's a picture for those of you who are not familiar with this school, the shared cafeteria and gymnasium. And it's a ceiling that's lower. It really can't be used as a typical gymnasium, but it's more of a multi-purpose space. There's problems with scheduling of activities, both because you can't use the space simultaneously for a cafeteria and a gymnasium, and you just can't function properly in that space as a gym. Proper secure vestibule entry. I skipped over adequate sized kitchen. So this, for the student body that serves, the kitchen's probably about half the size that it needs to be. Adequate space for administration and nurse suite. Office and small group instruction. Once again, as education changes over the years, there's more needs to pull out students to have one-on-one or small groups of 3 or 4 to give learning support for those students, and there's not proper space to do that. Conference space, both for faculty meetings, but also meetings with parents, and proper space to accommodate that. A sensory room, which is needed on the special education side for students who kind of need a break from their stimulus and their surroundings, so a room to go for that. Building storage, a separate bus loop and parent drop-off. You can see the aerial photograph there to your right. It's kind of everything is combined in one area, and it presents a safety hazard as far as students walking across traffic. And a playground enclosure fence. Moving on to lighter, you'll see some of these similar themes here with the advancement of your educational program. So once again, the STEM lab, office and small group instruction space, and conference rooms and sensory room, building storage, on-site parent drop-off. This is an urban site, so that might not be achievable, but that's certainly something that's needed here. Our current drop-off is on the street. And a playground enclosure fence. And you can kind of see there in that lower picture, that's a room that's currently being used, and you can see the cardboard wall divider as 2 breakout spaces for that supplemental learning support. Moving on to the middle school. This is one of your newer facilities, but as I mentioned before, as education changed, so does spaces around you. So this building doesn't have a large group instruction room, a separate choral classroom, 21st century library. You can see the picture of the library to the right there. It's a lot of books and a lot of shelves. As everybody knows, you're moving away from books and shelves and things like that. Everything's going more digital, but also you're creating more maker spaces that kind of are more in tune with the jobs that'll be in place for these students in the future. Once again, another site with poor vehicular circulation. I believe there's 2 or 3 parent drop-offs in that area and on the site. And outdoor learning space. Once again, this is another curriculum item as you're developing curriculum for science and things that involve outdoor activities, needing the proper space to educate those kids in the exterior. Over to the high school, this is once again your most recent project, so there's not as much need here. The quantity of student lockers, as the enrollments increase slightly at the high school, there's need for more student lockers and the need for additional parking. The district administrative offices, additional office space is needed to bring more district office staff in the same location. A proper arrangement of the secure vestibule, record storage, some public waiting and toilet facilities, and additional parking. So next we'll move into the existing facility conditions. So I mentioned before that what we just read through was more of a deficiency report of what you don't have to properly operate your facilities. This is looking at everything you do have. What is the condition of it? Is it needed upgrade from it's just at the end of its useful life, or is it a system failing, or is it not meet code, or does the roof need replaced, things like that. So this will look at all the existing facility conditions. And this kind of gives you a kind of high-level overview of the district with each one of your schools showing the original construction date of each of your schools, the most recent renovation and addition, and shows you how many years since that last renovation addition. So you can see there a kind of a rule of thumb with any like HVAC system, electrical system, plumbing system, things like that, is a 20 to 30 year lifespan. You should always, on a public building that gets used as much as it does and has the types of commercial systems that they do, you can expect to replace those systems every 20 to 30 years. So you can see Leiter's kind of on the cusp of that, but certainly Loyola Sauk Valley is far exceeding that. So you're going to see as we go through here, there's definitely more of a need at that school. And as I go through this, this is probably one of the major portions of the study that has a lot of information on that PDF on the website. So there is a more comprehensive document that goes in a lot more detail. And that's the same for every section, but certainly for this section. So I'm kind of going through the highlights here, but certainly feel free to page through that document. It's probably about 100 pages at the moment, but has a lot more detail and description of the things that I'm going through here. So resurfacing of the paving, a lot of the pavement areas are cracked and spalling and needs a mill and resurface. Exterior and interior doors are at their end of the useful life, and hardware is failing and materials are failing and they need replaced. There's some humidity issues in some of the classrooms along the side of the building towards the pre-line. That has to do with a variety of things. One, just the condition of the crawl space adjacent to it. The proper HVAC isn't in place where you have active humidity control and some other factors. So those should be addressed. The majority of the finishes are original or date back to the 80s. So a lot of them are failing and need replaced, the majority of the finishes. The toilet rooms are in need of renovation, both from an ADA standpoint, but just from a condition of the fixtures and finishes as well. Classroom casework, you can see a photo on the bottom right there. A lot of the laminate is delaminating. It doesn't, and I mentioned before, it doesn't really meet the needs of the school district as far as storage. But it's also in various states of disrepair and needs replaced. The food service equipment, all that you can see there in the second photo on the bottom from the left, a lot of that equipment is at the end of its useful life and it's failing and it doesn't meet the needs, so all that equipment should be replaced. And then there is asbestos floor tile throughout a lot of the building that should be abated and replaced with any major project. Moving over on, staying with Loyola Sauk Valley, but moving over to the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. Once again, I mentioned HVAC system at the end of its life, that whole system should be replaced. The plumbing and piping system, as well as the plumbing fixtures, need replaced. The power and emergency power system, I believe the emergency generator there is more of a residential grade generator and really can't serve the needs for backup power. LED lighting, I note there that's partial. The district has been taking initiative to replace some of the LED lighting throughout, so some of that work has already been done, but certainly there's a need to replace the rest of the lighting. And then some of your low voltage systems, your PA, your clock, and your bell systems are all at their end of their useful life and need replaced, along with the fire alarm. And the fire alarm most of these systems are also not code compliant. Speaking of code compliance, so any building that you look at, anytime there's a change in code, it's going to become code deficiency in one area or another as codes change and they become more strict. That doesn't mean every time there's a code upgrade or a code change that you need to upgrade the building. Buildings like this are grandfathered, but certainly as you take on any comprehensive project or any renovation project, the code's going to require you to upgrade portions of that building. Or if you're doing a comprehensive renovation of the whole building, then the whole building will need to be upgraded to code. Moving on to Lighter Elementary School. There's some concrete walks around the front of the building that are spalling and need replaced. The playground equipment is outdated and doesn't meet ADA and should be replaced. The exterior windows, they are a single pane storm window because they use the integral blinds and they're inefficient. So we would recommend that they get replaced. Minor finish replacement, there's some carpet that's failing. Some of these finishes were replaced in the renovation in the 90s, so it's not as bad throughout like Loyola Valley was, but there's certainly areas that need addressed. There's kitchen ceiling and some plaster throughout that needs patched and repainted. There's a section of the building where there's original doors and frames, original wood doors and frames to the original building that weren't replaced in the 90s that should be replaced. And then door hardware throughout the whole building is failing and needs a replacement. There's some non-compliant ADA toilet rooms. You can see the photo on the bottom right there that are off classrooms that should be upgraded. And then the walk-in cooler and freezer was noted by a facilities department as being an issue and being at the end of its life. Moving on to the HVAC MEP systems. The controls are outdated and in need of an upgrade to meet today's efficiency standards as far as controllability. And this is one of the buildings that is not air conditioned. So to get up to today's standards, certainly today's standards in any new school would be air conditioning. So we did note that as a deficiency. And I note some subheadings underneath there that along with replacement of the providing air conditioning, you would have to, your current system doesn't have the capacity to just add that on it. So you'd have to replace your air handling units at your main spaces and all the classroom unit ventilators. And an upgrade of the electrical service would be required to support the load of the HVAC system. The hot water boilers are at the end of the useful life and need replaced. There's some exhaust fans, various exhaust fans throughout the facility that do not work or are causing issues for the district, so we recommend replacing those exhaust fans. Cast iron storm piping is rusting and failing in some locations. That's going to be one that you're not going to be able to get at all. It's whatever you can, whatever's visible to be replaced, but certainly we wouldn't recommend tearing apart all the walls just to get all the piping and replace it. The original plumbing fixtures, there were some plumbing fixtures that were original to the building that should be replaced, but the majority of the fixtures were addressed in the 90s and are in good condition. Mixing valves on all the sinks, that's a code issue. And once again, the fire alarm, clock, bell, and intercom systems are either at the end of their useful life or not code compliant. LED light fixtures, once again, this is partial. The district has been going through and providing new LED lighting in minor projects throughout. And then lighting controls to meet today's code standards. Moving on to the middle school. Starting out in the site, there's some issues with the soccer field drainage, so installing an underfield drainage system to address those issues. And I'll kind of say this, that you know, as part, the Department of Education requires us to document everything that's needed to upgrade to current standards. And I mentioned this to the board as well when I spoke to them about this, but there's not a school district in Pennsylvania that can take everything on that list and fix it. It just doesn't happen in a public school system. So while certainly this is going to be a long and extensive list, and when we get the cost, there's going to be a lot of costs incorporated in that. It's not meant to be, this is everything that absolutely has to be done. This is a list of things that need upgraded to meet today's standards, and it'll be up to the board to decide when and how they address each one of these. There's a couple storage buildings outside that have a roof and walls that are that need replaced or repainted. There's a locker room you can see there, photos to the left. This is kind of a common theme here. Most of the deficiencies here are things that weren't addressed in the previous renovation addition project. So the tile in the locker rooms, the gymnasium equipment, the TV studio AV equipment was replaced in the new project, but it has failed and there's no parts. It can't be properly fixed or replaced, so it needs replaced. Refurbish or replace the corridor lockers. Those were not addressed prior. The domestic hot water heater is needed replacement, and the drains in the locker room shower do not meet code. So if the district would choose to replace the tile, they can relocate the drains at that time. And once again, LED lighting and lighting controls. Moving over to the high school. So the stadium and concessions locker building is in need of exterior repainting. There's a tech ed pathway you can see there in the photo in the middle there that the students are walking across the grass area. So it's just recommended to put a railing to have them use the proper sidewalk. Maintenance building roof is in need of replacement. That's that separate maintenance district maintenance office and garage that's at the high school site. The auditorium flooring is just need of see there a photo on the right, need of just resurfacing. And then there's some faucets on some solid surface lavatories that are in the gang bathrooms that have failed and need replaced. That's just a couple of fixtures. So the cost to upgrade I'm going to review now is basically parallels with all those items that I reviewed. Once again, this is another good place to go if you're interested to go in that full PDF document and look at there's a breakdown of each one of these items. This is kind of a summary. I'm not going to read through all these numbers, but we kind of broke it out: site work, building exterior, building interior, any specialties and equipment, and then the HVAC, plumbing, and electrical systems. So you can see there a bulk of the cost and the recommended upgrades is in those systems, the HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. And then the building interior deals with the finishes, and then you can see some of the specialties and equipment number there. But an estimated construction cost of $5.4 to $6.2 million. So a couple caveats, and these are in the full study as well. But this is kind of not to be taken like, okay, here's the cost to address everything we need to do at Loyola Sauk Valley, simply because this doesn't include any of the deficiencies that we talked about before. So if there's a need for a STEM lab or a separate gym, this is just looking at your existing conditions. And we do this because that's part of the Department of Education's requirement is to document the cost to upgrade those existing conditions. And the other way this serves is that if there's a building that that the district doesn't want to take on a full comprehensive project, this can kind of serve as a menu of options down the road to say, all right, this summer we want, you know, this is a higher priority. We're gonna replace this or tackle this item, and so this kind of gives you the district a kind of line item, so to speak, of each one of those upgrade needs. So for lighter, I'll note here that even though this is one of the more recent, this is more recently renovated than Loyola Sauk, this is a larger building than Loyola Sauk Valley. So there is that factor, but also to provide air conditioning, you'd have to replace the whole HVAC system. So that's where a lot of the cost resides in this. So the total estimated cost here is 4.9 to 5.6 million. At the middle school, it's more kind of minor upgrades here and there, but looking at a total of 1.1 to 1.3 million. And then at the high school, 182,000 to 209,000. And then at the district administrative offices, 34,000 to 39,000. And those two facilities, the majority of that was kind of what you saw, the common theme at the middle school is kind of things that didn't get addressed with the previous project. So just picking up those loose ends that weren't a part of that past project. So this just kind of gives you an overview of the different facilities. And I'll kind of summarize everything and talk about the next steps moving forward. So this gives kind of a summary matrix rubric, if you will, of all the different aspects of the facility study that we've looked at to date and where each of your buildings reside as far as being a major need or a minor need. And at the beginning, I mentioned building capacity is not an issue, not only currently, but also with declining enrollment, it's not going to be an issue as well. So that's not something the district has to consider addressing. Educational and functional deficiencies, obviously, as education changes, so do the spaces around them need to change. And with Loyola, Hvac, and Leiter being two of your older schools that haven't been renovated, you're going to have more need there. So major need at Loyola Hvac Valley, moderate need at Leiter and CE McCall. Existing facility conditions. So what is the state of all your existing components of the building? Loyola Hvac Valley is the major need, moderate need Leiter, and then minor and no need, of course, of the middle school and the high school. Operational efficiencies, and this kind of deals with the fact that there's a little bit more capacity than what's actually needed at two of those elementary schools. So I think it was important for the administration to document that and make that known. So those are moderate needs. So the next steps, obviously, we're kind of at this juncture where we're presenting everything that we've, all the data we gathered and needs assessment that we made to date and gathering input from the school board and the public. After we've gathered that input, we'll develop the construction options to meet those needs. And we have, because of the pandemic and the little bit of delay on the process, we have begun that discussion with the administration so that we can make sure we're not getting too far behind the ball with the sunset date on the PlanCom project. And then once we develop those options, we'll, as Christina mentioned, we'll circle back around and give another presentation that looks at those options and gather more input from the school board and the public. And then from there, determine the recommended options. And I always like to say that we're just the architects. It's the school board has the difficult decision of making the determination of what is in the best needs of the district. But we're certainly here to provide any information we can and any feedback and guidance as professionals in the industry and with the experience that we have. So I think at that time, that concludes my portion of the presentation. And I'll turn it back over to Christina.
Thank you, Scott.
Sure.
We will allow public questions at this point in time. Our Sebastian Pfeiffer, who is our technology specialist, will be assisting all of you who may have questions, and he is going to explain how we will be receiving those questions. When you do have a question, please state your name and where you live, just like you would at a normal board meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so as Christina said, we will be taking public comment at this time. We will be going down the list alphabetically. We have quite a few people joining us today, so if we have multiple, we'll be using that to take your comments one at a time. If you are interested in commenting, there should be a hand icon on your screen. I believe in most cases it's blue. Just go ahead and click on that. I see we already have at least one person who's done so. We can see who has raised their hand and allow you to speak when you're ready. I do see that the person who had their hand raised had put their hand down, so I will not be calling on them, but if that was a mistake, go ahead and throw it back up there. Okay, so I'm seeing Misty Emick has their hand raised, and I'm going to allow her to talk now.
Hi, Ms. Mason and the rest of the board. My name is Misty Emick. I'm at 511 Toole Street, and I'm also the PTO president over at Leiter. So I guess my question is, going through the feasibility study, which I greatly appreciate that how it was broken down for us parents and in the general public. I guess the one thing that's really standing out at me as a serious issue is the asbestos in the tile at the Valley. I mean, and this is tile that I know just from being in the Valley as a volunteer, there are tiles that are cracked. Is this something that we're planning on addressing immediately? Because to me, that seems like a big deal.
I would let Scott answer that. If you have any response, Scott.
Sure. When it comes with asbestos, we're certainly not an asbestos consultant, but do have experience with it. Asbestos floor tile is what's considered it's not hazardous until it becomes friable. So in other words, if you start to break it apart or start to demolish it, or the particles get in the air. So certainly there's many districts throughout Pennsylvania that do have floor tile, asbestos floor tile, and is known. And as any of those conditions arise, should it get damaged, then it's addressed. But it's very common to have floor tile in place over a long period of time and not be an issue. But once again, if it does become friable, that's when it becomes an issue and needs to be addressed. As far as when timing of replacement of that, I'll of course defer to the district on that.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Misty.
Okay, so again, if there's anybody else who would like to comment, please raise your hand now.
Sebastian, while we're waiting for some more hands to raise, hopefully, one of the other things the public can do too is after they've reviewed the video and maybe it causes them to have some questions, all the board members' emails are on the district website. The superintendent's email is there, and you can just send questions to us, and we can address those questions as we go in some form or fashion, whether it be a public comment, response document, or whatever it might be. We will address those. So please avail yourself to those email addresses and comment in that way if you would like to.
While we're waiting, Scott, I know I've asked you this question before, but this is a question that needs to be asked so the public can hear it. Is PlanCon guaranteed money at this point?
So there's kind of two prongs to that question. So one is the PlanCon that was in place. So at the time, back in, I think it was probably 2015, 16, I forget the exact time frame, PlanCon went on a moratorium. So the state basically said, we're not going to allow any more applications. We of course put the application for the Valley in before that happened. So we're eligible, but at that time they basically said no more applications, and they were deciding what to do with the whole PlanCon process. They have since provided funds to projects that were in the queue. So those projects are getting reimbursed, but as far as we're hearing this year that maybe there's no money in the budget for PlanCon, and whether that means the new system or the old system, we're not quite sure. But at any year, I think a lot of districts in the past have experienced this when the state one for a couple of years decided not to fund PlanCon, and as a result, a lot of districts were relying on that for their budget. They couldn't meet their budget needs, and it created all kinds of issues. But so while there is no quote unquote guarantee of when they will fund it, any project that has been through the process or is eligible for the process is going to be guaranteed funding. It's just a question of when and how and when that funding will come through. Now, on the new PlanCon process, so the state is basically made a commitment through an act to develop a new PlanCon process and revamp the old PlanCon, which will be implemented in July. That new process will be made available. However, if there are no funds, if the state decides not to fund it in that fiscal year, you will not be able to submit a project for PlanCon. So it's kind of two prongs to that question there. Certainly the Part A, while you're not guaranteed of when the money will be in the budget, you are guaranteed those funds. But certainly any project that gets submitted under the new process, once again, you would be guaranteed that money. It's just, but at any time the state could take it out of their budget, and for that reason, any financial advisor in the state would advise you not to bank on PlanCon funds as a revenue source for any project. So.
And with that being said, the money that right now that is being paid for projects that were already done, isn't it true that the state took out a loan for I forget how many $1 billion to fund it? And so that means that any money going forward, the state is going to have to try to find money for that, and they've already had to borrow money in order to fund what was already on the books. And like you said, PlanCon, since we're under PlanCon A, we're guaranteed to get the money, PlanCon money. The problem is when. And if we don't get it for 5 or 10 years, the property owners in the district would be paying all of that debt and not getting any help from PlanCon.
Right. And yeah, pretty much everywhere we go, any district we go, the financial advisors of that district are basically saying, when you go to borrow to pay for any project, if it's a PlanCon eligible project, we're not going to factor reimbursement into that formula. You're going to borrow the whole amount up front, and then if and when you get reimbursement, then that'll just be kind of a bonus or surplus to your budget.
Exactly, and that's why I have said from the beginning that we can't afford new debt, and that we should do projects at the Valley as we have the money for it and not rely on PlanCon. And we have $5 million in capital projects to in the capital projects fund to be able to do quite a bit at the Valley.
Okay, so I'm seeing 2 more hands. We have Tina Marie Klein with her hand raised, so I'm going to allow you to speak now, Tina.
Thank you. Tina Marie Klein, 1009 Toole Street, Montoursville Borough. As we were looking at the capacity of the buildings, and obviously things can change with enrollment, but looking at where we're at now, given that there is quite a bit that needs to be done at the Valley, has the board looked at possibly reshuffling the grades at this point? I don't know if McCall has more capacity. Can 4th grade be there? Have we talked about maybe just putting all K1 and 2 at one school? Maybe looking at that to make it work a little bit better, because I agree that there's some major safety issues. There's some major health issues that have been going on at the Valley for years. And I can only speak for myself. I did not have a child at the Valley. However, when I was active in Girl Scouts at the younger levels, we used to meet at the Valley. And I had never put 2 and 2 together, but every time I walked out of that building, I was stuffy, I had nosebleeds. There are health issues at that building. And quite frankly, if I was a parent that had a child up there, I probably wouldn't send them there. I would probably either look at a cyber option or pay for them to go elsewhere. And until you address this, people are going to continue to leave the district. Thank you.
You're on mute, Christina.
My apologies. Tina, let me address what you have brought forward. What you are saying we would be looking at in the next set of the feasibility study. Those options would be presented as we're moving forward, and they too would be public. So anything that gets discussed as far as grade reconfiguration or line reconfiguration would be something that would be discussed with the public as well. Thank you for the question.
Okay, and next up we have Misty Emick again with her hand raised. So go ahead and you may speak now, Misty.
Thank you, Sebastian. Real quick, going through the feasibility and things like that, I see that cafeteria equipment and coolers are both issues facing the elementary schools. My question is, can we expect any sort of reimbursement from Nutrition Inc. as we are contracting our cafeteria services out through them? I would think that they would be responsible for the equipment. I know they're responsible for the maintenance on the equipment as they clean it every day.
We do have a contract with nutrition. We would have to be looking at what that contract states specifically for the replacement of equipment and the types of equipment that would be replaced, as well as whether that would be something that would then affect the guarantee that the district gets, and how that affects the guarantee that the district would get from nutrition may play a bigger role in this over that period of time. So yes, I believe that we definitely would want to be investigating that, just as you have said, Misty.
Thank you very much, Ms. Basin.
You are welcome.
Okay, we have some more hands here, so I'm going to allow Kay to speak.
Okay, my question is, have you ever considered building a whole new elementary school or finding property to build the whole new school and combine both Leiter and Loyola Valley?
Kay, before I answer that, may I ask where you're from and who you might be?
Okay, I'm Kay Blair, and I live out Route 87. I'm a mile before the elementary school. Both my children went to Loyola Valley, McCall Middle, and graduated from the high school with honors. So that's one of my questions. You have a wonderful school district. You really do. And my kids are both really doing well in life because of being in Montoursville district. But I do think instead of pointing fingers at which school's better, which school's not better, have you ever thought of combining the two schools and making it one elementary school?
Okay, yes, that will also be part of this next step that we're reviewing. We're looking at this from exactly what you're bringing up. The educational standpoint must be the first consideration. And then the financial standpoints have to be able to support what the educational values are. So that is something that I am sure that we're going to see in the next set of feasibility study, because you, like other people, have shared that information with me. I have shared that with our architects as well. And I really appreciate you saying those wonderful things about your children, but I'm also sure that it had something to do with good parenting as well.
Well, I'll tell you,
Thanks.
my father-in-law taught at the high school, and we have been there for our kids. And now my grandchildren are going through the school district, and I only want the best for them.
Absolutely, so do we. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have Misty Emick with another comment. So go ahead and speak, Misty.
Thank you, Sebastian. Sorry, guys, I'm getting questions from our parents, and I'm kind of just reiterating what I'm getting. So my question is actually for Mr. Snell. And I understand, you know, as a district, it's just not good financial sense to borrow. And I understand that. But my question, and it's kind of based off Ms. Klein's comment too, is there are some serious health concerns out at the Valley. So how do we prioritize what needs done now versus what can wait till later when we have people getting sick from being in the building?
Well, my answer to you, Misty, is that I think we should look at the areas that are creating the health problems and prioritize those areas as we move forward.
Let me stop there too, Misty. We do have a series of tests that are run on an annual basis, and all of those results are public. I think the last time someone asked, I think it was one of the other persons who asked here, she wanted to see copies of those pieces of the tests that we do run within the district, which include air quality testing, which would be more, I think, probably along the lines of what you're asking for. Those test results are always available publicly. We do not have anything at this point in time that would indicate that there would be any issue with air quality within the district. We also have numerous other tests. We have the water tested every day. We have our roof tested. We have numerous things tested. And I don't know if Joe Naffo, if he is on this call. Let me just see.
I am.
Joe, if you go ahead. Joe, if you would like to address that, I think that that would be a very good thing to maybe help us understand.
Yeah, that was a great answer, Christina. We do have, we have 6 months asbestos surveillance testing. It's air testing. It's, they look at the tile, they look at any issues that may be coming up so we can address that. We do have yearly air quality testing in the beginning of August every year to make sure the kids can come back to school. We have fire extinguisher testing, fire alarm testing. We have water testing daily now. Then we also have lead that's required once a year. So yeah, everything up there is very safe and very healthy. We did change a lot of ceiling tile. We had that when we had that mold issue, we replaced like 8-9 ceilings. And so yeah, a lot of the testing and stuff has been taken care of. And it is available to be viewed anytime.
Thanks, Joe. Hey, Joe, I do have a quick question for you real quick.
Sure thing.
Is the water tested at all the buildings or is it just the Valley?
The water at the Valley is tested daily for chlorine that has to be added to the well. And yearly, we have now been required to have a lead testing in every building.
All right, thanks, Joe. Much appreciated.
Yep. No problem.
Thanks, Misty.
Okay, thank you, Misty. Again, we have Tina Marie Klein. Oops, sorry, Tina, I unmuted you at the same time that you did.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, Verizon. All right, just to follow up on the air quality things. Yes, those are tested once a year. And with respect, you can have exposure once a year. That's what they're testing. All that does is tell us what it is at that time. My concern is about the repeated exposure on a daily basis. That's where you have sensitization of the immune system and other things within the body. And I would love to look at medical records and look at the research with the school nurses up there and look at the number of kids that have asthma and allergy up there as compared to lighter as compared to some of the other elementary schools. Because I bet those numbers would tell us a whole lot more than that air quality. Again, you know, I can test anything today. You can come and test my water today. It's perfectly fine. If it's not tested for another year, if something happens in the meantime and I'm daily exposure, that's when you have problems. So with respect, yes, I was the one that inquired a couple years ago about the air quality. Those results are available, and that's great. But anecdotally, when I look at children and the kids of my friends and kids of my students that I teach at the college and coworkers, I notice anecdotally that those kids that go up there, in my opinion, have higher rates of asthma and allergies. And it would be interesting to look at the staff and the faculty up there to see as well, because that also impacts healthcare costs, which are picked up by the taxpayers. Thank you.
Tina, thank you very much. I do remember it was you who asked for those. We did start doing them twice a year at different seasons so that we could understand a little bit more just of what you're saying with that. And those things do obviously concern everyone. And I think as we move forward in this study, if these are the realities of that building, then maybe what Kay asked is more prevalent than what we think it should be at this point in time. So we really will give that some serious consideration. Thank you.
I just want to say that ever since I've been on the board and the subject of humidity and air quality at the Valley, whenever it's come up, in fact, when a past study was done and I questioned the back of the school, the trees that are there shading the back of the school, and I questioned the experts on if trimming them trees back to the property, the school's property line, if it would help with the humidity in the school by letting sunlight hit the back of the building more than it does now. And the experts said it would. I've been bringing that up for 5 years now. It has yet to happen. I don't know why it hasn't happened. I don't know why our maintenance fights it, but anything that would help keep that school dry would help with the air quality in it.
I believe, Ron, what we heard from Scott too earlier in a presentation for the board, which it was the exact presentation that we saw this evening, he shared that we have more humidity underneath the building with the crawl space being a larger issue than anything that we have going on right now. And when we saw those pictures, and I think those pictures were there this evening, you could see the water laying behind the district building that way. So I don't remember, was it Bill Kamar? I forget what Bill's last name was. I don't remember him talking specifically to the issue of the trees. Joe, is that one that we spoke of with Bill at the meeting? Because I believe Ron brought that up at the meeting about the trees, like he said. I think he did do that.
Yeah,
I don't remember the results of that.
And I'm not arguing the fact that crawl space adds to it. I'm arguing the fact that we need to do everything possible to try to help the situation. That's the point I'm arguing.
Hey, Ron, it's just not a fair comment to what I've been trying to do with this district that you say that maintenance won't take care of it. I just want to let you know that it needs the board to tell me to do it. It needs a lot of money. It needs an engineer or somebody to tell us to put a stone swale in there and to take care of the trees. It's everybody. It's not just maintenance won't do it. Thank you.
Joe, do you got fans running and the humidifiers going down in that crawl space?
Yeah, we got everything. We got fans running through the hallways. I left units all unoccupied. A lot of my colleagues in all schools have now started doing that because of a few years ago and all the problems. So now we let a lot of air circulate. We try not to shut shades like we used to and let the darkness in. So it's been better. It's been a lot better.
And just speaking from our side of things, the biggest issue that could be changed to resolve the issue is replacement of the HVAC system. The fact that your HVAC system doesn't have the ability to actively dehumidify would, you know, you could have the driest conditions and still have a humidity issue. Driest conditions around the building and still have a humidity issue when you have that change in temperature. So it's a common problem with these older HVAC systems that they don't have that ability to accommodate. But
Scott, could you also put a price, an estimate on, instead of putting air conditioning into the valley, put a dehumidification system in?
I'll talk to the engineers about that. I think, without speaking for them, I think one of the first things that they'll say is, with that system being 37 years old, to add just dehumidification to it, you're probably going to be adding adding a new feature to a system that really is going to be failing in a matter of years anyway. So it'd probably be, but we can certainly price that out and look at that as an option. But we probably wouldn't be something we recommend, and it would probably just be an entire replacement to address the issue. But I'll inquire with them.
Ron, I want to make sure I understand. You're not asking for no air conditioning to be in the building, though, right?
No, I was asking to see the difference between, now HVAC covers the heat too, and I realized that we need to upgrade the heat, Scott.
Right.
But I'm the air conditioning versus a
You mean a heat only with dehumidification? You're still replacing the whole system, are you saying, Ron?
There was a study done a few years ago, Christina, I believe. They had some kind of dehumidification only system that I think it was Reynolds that did that, ESCO, I think it was, if I remember right.
You are correct.
I think you're right, Joe.
Something they said it didn't provide enough savings for us at the time, and the electrical had to be upgraded to do that, and it just went on and on. I think is how it ended.
Okay,
So Ron, I have to make sure I understand though too. Are you asking Scott to look into something as a dehumidification for the units that we already have, or are you looking for new units to include air conditioning, heat, and some kind of a dehumidification system?
Well, no, because you don't need a dehumidification system when you have air conditioning, because that's a dehumidification system in itself. What I'm saying is to see a price on replacing the heat, and instead of the air conditioning part of it added to it, add the dehumidification system, just to see what the numbers are, because that would be a cheaper alternative than the air conditioning system, at least when Reynolds,
right?
You're still going to have that issue though. You know, going that route, you'd be better off doing the AC, because then you have a constant temperature. I mean, without the AC, you're still going to run into the issue with the humidity. Is that somewhat true, Scott? Or
I'll have to defer to my engineers on that, but I think there's probably a type of system you could put in there where there's some form of active dehumidification in the controls and the way you move air and things like that. But we could certainly look at that. You're probably going to be near the cost of where you're at now in the grand scheme of things. It might save some money, but certainly something we can pull two different prices together.
And I wanted to also reiterate that the board, when we said we wanted this feasibility study, we wanted the air conditioning at both of those elementaries to be included in those costs for the comfort of students, because we do run into issues even when we're coming back into school in August. And there are parents, I've had parents tell me we should have cancellation days when it's too hot because the classrooms do get too hot. So, you know, we watch that on a continual basis. So I would not want to say that we were not going to do that if it was part of what the board already agreed to for the feasibility study. And it sounds like the cost difference would be something that would be nominal. And again, I would hope that we're looking at that for the purposes not only of dehumidification, but for the students as well.
Well, I'm just looking for the cost difference, and it might be minimal, but I think that the more information we have, the better chance we have of making the right decision.
We can certainly provide that.
I mean, let's face it, we're not a rich district, and like I said before, we can't afford to take out big loans. We've already had a big loan, and until that's paid off, we can't afford to take out a massive debt.
Yeah,
So
well, we're really
I just wanted to see what the difference would be, and that would the getting rid of the humidity would solve a lot of the air quality problems that we might have at the Valley.
We are really early into this process. So I think the questions that we're asking right now are a little preamped here. We gotta wait till we get more of this study together and see, you know, the next meeting when more comes out. I mean, we're kind of jumping the gun here a little bit. I mean, once we have all the real facts and everything that we need, we can make a better evaluation. I think we're kind of, you know what I mean? I agree. I feel your concerns just like anybody else, but let's just let this thing materialize and see where it goes before we, you know what I mean, see where we're at.
Absolutely. That's what I want. Facts. I want the numbers. That's all I ask for. I would like to see the difference in the numbers. That's it. You know, no decisions made. Just let me see the difference in the numbers.
Yeah. Okay.
I did see that Aiden Jackson had a hand up. Aiden, if you would like to jump in here, please. We really would like to hear from you too.
Aiden, I've allowed you to speak. You'll have to unmute yourself so that we can hear you. If you're having trouble, you should be able to see the unmute button at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Okay, it looks like Aiden popped out of here. We do have another hand raised, so I will allow Kay to speak again. And Aiden, if you get your microphone working, just go ahead and raise your hand and we'll give you another try.
I just want to say one thing. In all of this, we're talking money, okay? We need to talk about the children and what's best for the children. And I don't understand how Mr. Snell can constantly say we can't spend money, we can't spend money. when the monies we spent on that new high school, and if you want these little kids from Loyola Valley, Leiter, and the middle school to get there and have a good time and a successful time, we got to put the monies out for the little kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay.
That's exactly what we're doing, Kay. We're doing these studies and getting the research done and to figure out what direction the board and the community has to take the next steps to. And, you know, as soon as that gets accomplished, then we can pursue, you know, that goal with that very goal in mind.
I just want to say that I've been an advocate for the Valley for a long time now. And I think that the Valley has been put on the back burner for too long, Kay. But we need to do, whatever we do, we need to do it in a fiscally responsible way. Like I said, I'm an advocate for the Valley, and I have been.
Every person on this board understands and knows that exactly exists. And Ron, that's exactly why we're doing what we're doing. And I feel really good about where we're at. And I feel really good at the process that we're doing here. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think that, you know, you are absolutely right. We have to do what is fiscally responsible, and you know, it will happen. That's for sure.
Okay, Misty Emick is raising her hand again. I'm going to allow you to speak, Misty.
Thank you, Sebastian. Ms. Basin, you mentioned that the next part of the feasibility study will happen in July. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going to happen on your guys' end between now and July?
Absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity. What we're going to do is, after these two meetings and we hear from the public and we get questions asked of us, we are going to take a look at what are the concerns of the community. What are they sharing with us? And that would be through all of these types of questions. If you as a PTO parent want to gain support and have some more questions asked or considerations for us, we really would like to hear from everyone. Like I said, we are all in this. This is a community decision, and the community leads the board so that we can make the right decisions. So we would love to have that input. Between that moment of, you know, somewhere around the middle of June, we will be working with the board and we will be working with the architects to have a complete understanding of what options do we think would be best, what options would be, and again, I'm going to say this because as a chief educator, I'm going to look at education first. The administrative team will do that, and then we will see where they fall within that financial aspect as well. So when we're looking at these types of options, Scott and his team of people will be putting those together for us. We will be sharing some of the pieces that we feel are necessities right now in education and will become more so the necessities as we move forward. We'll share that with the board. They will have input as to what those options should also look like. Then, when we have those compiled, and Scott has those compiled, he will also then compile the costs. He will compile what it would look like on sketches and drawings, and he will then forward that to us in public meetings. And we have 2 scheduled public meetings in July. And we would like, again, for the community input to be shared with us so that as we're making future selections of what they may look like, we hear all of you. We hear you and we want that input. So that's what we would then be looking at. After that, how I probably would envision it, and this is just a guess, so please don't take this verbatim, but it's a guess that I would think that we would start eliminating certain options. eliminating options that don't fit future goals. You know, we have a lot of different future goals. Maybe they don't quite fit where we are, or maybe we've had a different thought about how to work things into different places and different buildings, the reconfiguration of grades, all of those pieces. So I would imagine we come out with all of the ideas and then we start narrowing that down. And as we narrow that down, then we come up with maybe 2 that the board can choose from, that the public likes and that the public is willing to support, you know, because you're supporting it with your children and you're supporting it with your money. So we have to make sure that we're doing the right thing here. So I think that is probably how this would work.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I just want to add to what Christina said, that this board now encourages, wants, and appreciates all input from the community and moving forward with whatever might be done at the Valley or any school. Like I said, we want the input from the community.
Okay, we're gonna let Aiden Jackson give it another try. So go ahead and unmute yourself and see if you can talk.
All right, sorry, this is Melissa Jackson, 236 Arline Ave. I think I'm on my son's account. I was wondering what the PlanCon money is, like what would the refund from them be, or what is the amount that they've been willing, or I guess approved for renovations within the district?
Sure, I can answer that. The estimated reimbursement amount is about $2.3 million. That all depends on the final, how everything shakes out, but that's the initial calculation method. That is in the current PlanCon application, that is paid over the life of the loan. So if it's a 20-year borrowing, then that's paid back over that 20 years.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott, when you say that $2.3 million, that was on what they planned on doing out of the 2 options that they had for the Valley. That was on the final selection of the option, right?
So yeah, and I'll clarify, because that's sometimes a big confusion. It's you know, well, what if we do a bigger renovation than a smaller renovation? That's not going to change your reimbursement. Reimbursement calculations are based on your aid ratio, based on enrollment calculations, based on whether you're renovating or building new. But you know, it doesn't factor in how much you're doing. What Pde does say is, if you're going to go after a reimbursable project, you have to make that building whole or upgrade to current standards so that it's good for the next 20 years. Because that process is that you can't apply for another PlanCon until 20 years, and they want you to address everything in that building that would need addressed within the next 20 years. So if you were to, yeah, go ahead.
Say that again. If we were to do, no matter what we do, if we do anything, no matter what we do, we must address all code issues and bring them up to standard.
Yes, they want, yeah, essentially.
Those were your base numbers this evening. That's what you were sharing. Those codes would be up to standards, and that's all those numbers were including, correct?
Right, that didn't address any of your educational deficiencies or functional deficiencies or things like that.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
And one of the other things I think I forgot to mention in that cost, it's just construction costs only. So obviously, when you go into a full comprehensive project, there's financing fees, there's testing and inspection, there's regulatory agency review fees, there's architectural engineering fees, there's other soft costs that are involved in a project that cost doesn't include. So when we look at options, that's where you'll see that all-encompassing cost of addressing all the needs and a full comprehensive project. So that'll come out in the option phase.
Great.
Scott, I have
Melissa,
a question.
thank you. That allowed us to answer a lot.
Scott, I have a question regarding that.
Sure.
as we know, PlanCon isn't funded right now. So you said that that PlanCon's paid over the life of the loan. If PlanCon takes 5 years or even 10 years to get funded, do they make up the payments? We'll say 10 years. Do they make up the payments that 10th year that they missed for 10 years?
Yeah, so I don't know how they did it in the past. So when I say PlanCon is not funded, that means new PlanCon application. So this prior year, anything that was in the pipe that was already approved as a project and in the process of getting payment was funded like last year and got payments. Randy, did you receive all your PlanCon funds for the high school? So there was a period, I think, of a year or two where they didn't fund the projects that were in place, and districts didn't get paid for that. But when the moratorium went into place, they basically said, we're not accepting any new applications, but everything in the pipeline, and that's what you referenced before, they borrowed money to pay those projects. So I'm not sure how, we could probably look into that and find out the answer, but I'm not sure when they had that pause. How did they rectify the outstanding payments? You probably went through that with your middle school and could and figure out what they did there as far as catch-up payments or what. But I will say the new PlanCon process, they're changing it, and they're basically so another thing that happens with the life of, when I say the life of a loan, so if you refinance, which commonly happens throughout districts as a way to lower their debt service, to refinance, that plan in the previous process that would get stretched, their payments would get stretched out because your loan is getting stretched out. In the new process, they basically said, all right, 20 years, we're going to split it up. Whatever your reimbursement is, we're splitting up 20 years, and we're not going to drag it out for any reimbursement. But I'd have to look in to see how they did that catch-up payment, so to speak, in the prior process when they held off funding for a while.
Just to make it clear, you're not saying that any school district that submitted the A part of the process back in 2015 before the moratorium, you're not saying that all those school districts are funded, correct?
No, so they are. So it's essentially the state made the commitment. There was a period of time where they weren't funding PlanCon at all. They made the commitment to kind of catch up and start funding those projects that were in the pipeline already. What they basically said is when they put the moratorium in, they said, that's it. We're not until the moratorium's lifted, we're not going to accept any new applications and fund any projects. So any district that went forward with a project during that time was basically not eligible for reimbursement. And the preliminary budget that was released at the end of the winter didn't have any funds for the new PlanCon. It was kind of unclear were they intending to fund any projects in the prior PlanCon process, but who knows what's going to happen after the pandemic and when the final budget comes out. So, but those projects that had those Part A's were being reimbursed by the state.
Right, I realize they're being reimbursed, but is the funding there now for all those ones that were just A? Is the funding there in place now, where as soon as the project would be done, that funding from PlanCon payments would start?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question because every year, yeah, it's difficult to say because every year the state establishes their budget and they decide whether they're going to put money in there or not. So as of this year, this fiscal year, there is money to make those payments on those PlanCon projects. Next fiscal year, until the state passes the budget in July, you're not going to know what their intents are for allocating that money. So in other words, then that's what happened a while back, is everybody was used to getting their PlanCon payments, and then the state all of a sudden said, we got a budget issue, we're gonna cut funding for PlanCon, and basically that for that fiscal year, no one got their PlanCon money, or the budget was delayed in passing, and people weren't getting their reimbursement.
When they borrowed the money, that money that they borrowed was for projects that were already completed, correct?
Or projects in the process.
I think it was projects in the process as well, because they had to account for the need for those funds. So when you're looking at why you would need that much in funding, you had to show how many were already in the queue, because you know, the actuarial studies would probably say that those are in the queue did it for the reason of actually getting that reimbursement. And they would be like us, even if we're sitting out there, I think we would still be part of that borrowing, Ron, because they're going to look at the total overall project, calculate what they would have owed, and included that in their debt payment and in their thought process. That would be logical, but I'll stop there because I'm not sure.
So what you're saying is the money for a project that we would have that would comply where we could move forward, that money, reimbursement money is sitting there.
It would be logical to say that that's how they would have done their study to get that loan. Yes, it would be logical to say that. Now, we have a time constraint too, and that's why Jim Bogle called me and said, you really have to have your board start moving on this, or else it would be kicked out. Because then if we're kicked out, that means that someone else gets those funds, because they're not going to give the money back on the loan. They're going to be processing that out to other people then probably too.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's the other thing I think it's important to note is that that Part A application is for anything that was any option that was in that prior study. So that prior study only looked at renovations and additions to Loyola, didn't look at any grade configuration, or didn't look at project at Lighter or anything like that. So if the district were to choose to move in a different direction than what that PlanCon project represented, then of course that wouldn't be eligible under that previous Part A.
How about any attendees? Are there other questions from our attendees? This session is for you. We want you to be able to hear everything that's going on and to be able to share your views and opinions with us after you've seen those facts. You know, what are your thoughts with this? So please, if you would like to participate, raise your hand and we'll make sure that we have Sebastian call on you.
Okay, I'm seeing a hand raised. I'm going to allow them to talk now.
Hi there. My name is Dan Estella, resident here, right in town, about a block or so away from Lighter. Question about funding and whatnot, with everything going on with the pandemic. And when you look and project out 2 years, 3 years, next year, internet infrastructure is a huge piece that has to be addressed throughout all school districts. And how does that component play into the current projections that have been laid out today with other building projects and whatnot?
Daniel, let me ask is your question on a basis of education, or is your question on a basis of finance?
Twofold, I guess.
Okay. All right. So let me respond to you, and feel free to jump in here if you have a follow-up on this one. You're correct that the internet and having a lack of internet in our district is severely harmful for us. And that is because we are a district that transports numerous students, well over 1,000 students out of our 1,900 are transported, and many live within an area where they don't even have cell service. So when we had the closure on Friday the 13th, you know, I said March Madness was never more mad than this year, with Friday the 13th closing schools and then being told that we were going to close for the year. We were behind in not having a one-to-one initiative where we had already had the time, you know, the essence of time to help somebody make a decision so that you're being proactive instead of reactive is so essential. And we had to ensure through the state that if we were still closed here in the fall, that we would be prepared to provide planned instruction. And planned instruction would be providing an educational basis to students that would be moving them forward academically, that would be responsible for ensuring that there were 180 days of school and that there were no less, and that we were taking attendance, and that mandatory attendance was part of a general school day. So we were not prepared to be able to say that on two bases. And the first basis, excuse me, was the basis of devices. The second basis was the internet connections that some places are lacking. So we knew that getting devices was going to be a very difficult commodity to find within the pandemic because so many states were lobbying for their districts to do the exact same thing that we needed to do. And we're a small district compared to, you know, 50,000 Chromebooks needed by the state of New York and so many other places in need of these devices for our students. So we felt that that was the first really critical piece of ensuring that if we were remote learning in the fall, that we would be able to provide that remote learning on one consistent platform. And we had a public session or two on that as well. And we did have public input, and we had the board listen to our teaching staff and hear what our teaching staff had to say, because they are the professionals. They are our frontline people. They understand what it would mean to be remote. And at this point, you know, we need them to be speaking up with us so that we can make very good decisions that way too. So we moved forward with the purchase of the devices. We were very lucky. I think the purchase of the devices were around, in total, including those that were necessary for the special needs students, they were around 385,000, I want to say. We were very fortunate in receiving some federal money that amounted to about $238,000. And then we had other access federal funds of $75,000 to put toward the purchase of those machines. So we do have the machines now. We are developing policies, we are developing the practices, and the teachers have been working continuously on how they are going to deliver that educational product using those devices. And today we were told that if we come back, we will need to be prepared for planned instruction on a remote learning platform. And that would be because if COVID comes through, or we have another natural disaster where we are thrown back into the state of being yellow and possibly still being green, there are chances that we would not be in the classroom. So we tackled the first issue. What you're speaking about with the internet is one issue that we need more than just the school district to tackle with us. We've had meetings with the commissioners for Lycoming County who were very positive about assigning assets to help build that infrastructure in the areas where it is necessary. As I have said, we are a district of 186 square miles. We are one of the largest landmass districts in the state. So to compare us to districts who might be 10 miles large and might be very small is not the same comparison. You're comparing apples and oranges in that fashion. So we have a lot more area that does not have the cell service. I can tell you that there are individuals in Gamble Township who have written grants, who have made the public statements that in their township they are willing to try to develop towers, and they are willing to fund it to the tune of $20,000 or whatever they can get in these grants that they have applied for. We have sent letters of support to them, letting them know that we are so appreciative, because when you think about not having cell service, meaning you can't use a cell phone at all, you have no way of doing telehealth. You have no way of working through some of the pieces that individuals might need to work from home. So it's much more than the educational component. It's a whole community-wide component. So when we're talking about those things, we are trying to work with many partners. I will say that I did let the Secretary of Education know in Pennsylvania that until they too can help us, you know, when they were telling us, you know, you should be in planned instruction for the rest of the year, I said that's not possible for us. So they did assign us to a special coordinator. So we're working with the state Secretary of Education to help us develop these relationships with those who can provide cell service. We're also ready now to be able to provide hotspots in certain areas. So if students cannot have internet within their home, we can do asynchronous learning projects with them. We can still do planned instruction with them in the fall, but they will have to get to a hotspot. So that might mean going to a fire hall, going to a township building, going to one of our buildings where they can sit in the parking lot and download the materials that they need to have downloaded. So in looking at a planned feasibility study, what we also see and that we are working on would be that we will need space for cyber-led communications. And whether that looks like one or two, maybe different rooms, that is a possibility. And I know you might think cyber education, it should be all remote. It's not, because there are many facets to cyber education where you do need to provide differentiation to students who have different learning types and styles. You need to have a place where you can have communication with them if they're not doing well. You need to have that connection. That personal connection is so important. And I think that our teachers are one of the tops in the state for providing that. I am very proud to work with these folks. So as far as the money, it would have to be something that we would constantly include, but we are already part of our internet consortiums. We already have all of those pieces. If we were to do anything differently, it would be moving fiber lines, it would be doing those components. However, I don't see it being extraordinarily difficult nor much more expensive to maintain what we have within our buildings. However, if remote learning is possible, and we are moving our district into a cyber charter environment as well, in doing that, we will need more MiFis and we will need more cell service. So it is a community-wide, a statewide initiative. There's new legislation out there to help us develop those internet connections for our families. So we are watching this every day because that seems to be a hot button in a lot of ways. And like I said, not just education, but for the health of the community, it is something that we have to keep moving forward with. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it has. And thank you for being proactive on looking into the grants and the available monies that are out there to make things happen for all the residents within the community, no matter how far out they might be into the countryside. Once a follow-up a little bit, I don't know if it's off topic or not, but with the one-to-one initiative and the remote learning, how does that translate into classroom instruction? So we start the school year off, or at some point we're back into the classroom and we're teaching kids and we're doing things that we've been doing for years and years. Do we incorporate those Chromebooks or iPads or whatnot into that instruction? And what kind of training and teachers are definitely going to need a big help within that transition of being able to instruct with Chromebooks. And the best training to occur for even students is in the classroom. If we are providing those Chromebooks, do we prepare them within the classroom through using Chromebooks and moving towards that flipped classroom kind of model and doing those types of things?
You are exactly correct. And I know it's off topic for this meeting, but we're going to make it part of this meeting because I think it's a really good question to have some answers to. We are trying to be very proactive. We have met with college professors, we've met with cyber school teachers, we've met with other superintendents, other districts, other types of teachers who are in other places that already have tackled this beast when they've had time and they have had a lot of ability to test and retest and take their time with this. So we have been doing that. And we have had from May the 22nd forward until June the 8th, the staff are in professional development. They have 63 hours of professional development. They are learning the management system, the learning management system right now. They are then coordinating as teams of professional development. First grade is meeting with first grade, second grade is meeting with second grade. They are meeting together to tackle this as teams so that these Chromebooks, even if we are back in the classroom, these are a tool. They're just like another book. They're just like another piece of equipment for our students. And we're going to be using those on an everyday basis. The reason that we would want to do that is because at any time we would be called back into a yellow phase. We would have to start remote learning and we would have to be prepared for that. The other piece of this I think that's very interesting is that we must remember that our students are digital natives. Those of us over 50 are not. We try to be, but they are. And the world that they are going to have to live in is going to be completely different than the one that we lived in. And we must be able to give them the tools to provide them success. Look how many people have had to work from home. We're meeting on a Zoom session. That early in my career was not an option. So we're teaching them by being lifelong learners. We're teaching them how to adapt. And I think that that adaptation component, we must be preparing them to use the technology that they have available to them. We need them to be the scientists. We need them to be all of those professions that move us forward. And if we're not capable of giving them those tools, then we are not doing the job for them. So having those available to us now, we are in extensive professional development right now with our teams. We meet we meet 4 times a week. So that we can hear what the processes are. We have administrative meetings that include the teachers union and include Dave and Dottie, our president and vice president of the board. We go through all of the new state regulations, recommendations, guidelines, guide rails, whatever they call them. We are working through all of that. So all of us are learning things today that didn't exist 3 months ago. So hats off to our teams. They have been open-minded, scared. I would say yes, we are scared sometimes, but these are people with an attitude of we will get this done because we do love our kids. We want all of our kids to be successful. So it is an undertaking. I am not going to lie. It is an undertaking. But they humble me with everything that they give all the time, and this is no different. So, and we have some fantastic leadership going on within the district too. Sebastian Pfeiffer, I'm going to give a shout out to him. He's got all of this stuff up and running. He sees what teachers' needs are, and he can respond to it. Amy Breon is super important in the creation of the exploration and creation of curriculum with our teams that are meeting every week. And the rest of our administrative team is working so diligently in ensuring that we have all of the answers to all of these little state checklists covered and how we're going to manage this and how we're going to do this and what they're doing. It's completely different than anything that we've ever seen. So I respect them. I am so grateful to be a part of that team with them. And they are doing some very, very good things for your children. And I'm so glad that we're here.
Thank you. I'm good now.
Thank you, Daniel, for your question. Any other responses from our community? Okay.
So am I to understand that next Tuesday night or next on the 10th, that meeting is a continuation of this meeting or a replay?
It will be a replay of this meeting, Kay, and anybody else who has any other questions, any community members, please, you're feel free. If you have new questions that you would like us to address, we'll try to address everyone's questions, but the material presented will be the same. So the meetings in July, the material will be different for the beginning meeting. Like, we're going to run it the same way. These two meetings will be the same content. The next two meetings will also be the same content. And we wanted to just make sure we can give people options.
Then when will you go back to the drawing board and decide what proposals to make to us to vote on or give you our opinions on?
I would let that up to the board. They will then probably do those things in the public eye as well, as to which ones they feel have validity and which ones they would not choose. So those would also be at our public meetings. We certainly can create special meetings for just that topic so that we are not bogging people down in a long meeting that would be an agenda after agenda and a board meeting plus this topic. So that is something that we can make sure that the board determines well ahead of time what we would like to do. So you may see a continuation of additional meetings into August.
Okay, Chelsea Kramer, I'm going to allow you to speak now.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, this is my first time attending a Zoom meeting with the Montoursville Area School District.
Well, join us.
Yes, thanks for having me. We're new to the district, about 2 years. We live off of the creek here. 2 daughters that go to the district. And I received a postcard today. We check our mail. We have to walk to our mailbox about a quarter of a mile, inviting us to this meeting. I was just wondering if in the future, because I do appreciate when you send out mass, I guess, voicemail or, messages via phone, cell phones, alerting us of things that are going on with the school, if it'd be possible to have that same kind of format for these type of meetings. I'd like to know what's going on with our district, and was a little bummed that I missed the first 30 minutes of the meeting due to when I picked up the mail, if that makes sense.
And let me respond to that. Chelsea, if you looked at that postcard, you saw a white sticker with new dates. Mm-hmm. We had originally had these meetings scheduled within fire halls so mm-hmm. that we would be out within the community. And I think it was Gamble and Plunkett's Creek. I forget which fire halls were allowing us to come out, but that was something that we had received the postcards the day that we were going to be out. The day that we heard we were closing, we received the postcards. So we had made all of these wonderful plans to make sure that we were in the community and we were sharing publicly and we were doing all of these pieces, and then the floor fell out. So we wanted to make sure that as these decisions were coming, they were coming pretty quickly as far as the dates. So I apologize for getting those out, but we had to take all of, I think there were 7,000 postcards and re-sticker them so that we were kind of using the same money as we already did for those. But yes, we do have board meetings the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of every month. You are welcome to join us when we go live. They are in the high school at the Broad Street Conference Room. And when we're doing Zoom sessions like this, you're always welcome to jump on. You can hear everything that's going on within the buildings. The principals do share on occasion different facts and features. We have a lot of kids who love to come to the meetings and share with the public what they're getting to do in their school, what projects they're working on, what awards they've won, what music they're playing, what teams we have to award things to. So please join us anytime that you would like to.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I was just thinking, you know, in the future, just with the technology that we do have and the messages that you do send out to us via email as a parent, it would just be wonderful to have that. And I understand, I see the sticker on top of the postcard. But yeah, I feel like I missed part of the meeting just because it was, you know, 30 minutes into it. Just know it was being said in the beginning. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea. I also want to reiterate, in case you did miss it, that these meetings are all recorded and posted to our YouTube channel. And we will be holding a duplicate meeting on, is it the 10th, Christina?
It is.
Okay. Okay, Carrie, you're up next. Carrie, are you there? You can unmute yourself. I believe the button should be at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Okay, we might be having some technical difficulties there. I will send you back. If you get it figured out, go ahead and raise your hand again. And if not, like Dave mentioned earlier, you can always email some questions to the board or attend our next meeting and feel free to comment at that one.
Okay. Going once. Going twice. I see no hands, so I think we can put an end to this meeting. We'll page mark it right here. Again, it will be recorded. You can pick up that recording by going to our YouTube channel, which is right on the home page, top right-hand corner. It says YouTube. Click on that, and you will be taken to the link for this meeting. We will also record the next sets of meetings coming up regarding the feasibility study so that all of the information is available all of the time. You don't have to come into this meeting via computer. You're welcome to even call in and stay on the phone. I see there's a few phone numbers here, so you can call in and stay on the phone. So if the phone is the only technology you have, we want you to still be a part of this. Thank you to all of the participants this evening. Thank you to the board. Thank you to the admin team. We appreciate the time that you're spending on the investment in the kids. So we appreciate it very much. And we can conclude at this point. We will see everyone again next Tuesday and then again next Wednesday. Thank you. Have a great evening.